r/r credit by online comps. What do you never fuck with? Electricity. It don't play. Edit. I'm glad we all agree. The pancreas. Literally the only thing I heard during my entire surgery rotation. 3 rules of surgery. Eat when you can. Sleep when you can. Don't fuck with the pancreas. The casually dressed old men at corporate parties or events. There's a reason they don't need to don the suit and tie. Cause I work warehouse and I'm the boss's cousin, so what? Gum's gotten mintier lately. Have you noticed? Garage door springs. Seriously. Unless you know what you're doing, you'll die. Edit. Thanks for the silver. You've popped my cherry. How do they kill you? If one gets rusty and snaps while you are in its range, it will seriously fuck you up. There was a dude on another Reddit post that said a garage door spring snapped in his house and it shook the whole house. Don't fuck with them. Edit. I wasn't expecting this comment to blow up. I will have to close replies for now. Hornets. However, if you do have to fuck with them, there's a few redneck methods of getting them gone that are really effective. My dad's got a cabin way out in the woods, and one day we found a big hornet's nest just under a window, buzzing with sinister intent. Since the nest was about 15 feet in the air, the usual can of Raid wasn't going to cut it. My dad's solution was to slam 3 beers before pulling out his wet/dry vac and duct taping it to a spare piece of 10-foot metal piping. The cabin was in the middle of renovations to get running water, so construction material was all over the place. Then, he took the piece of pipe and positioned it using sawhorses so that the opening was just below the entrance of the hive. And then he turned on the vacuum. The combined noise and vibration of the vacuum was enough to cause the entire hive to disgorge its angry occupants, who would buzz around for about half a second before getting thwapped down the tube and battered around in the belly of the vacuum cleaner. Now, unfortunately, this isn't enough to kill them, which we learned after pulling the top of the vacuum cleaner and seeing a heaving, surging mass of chitin and malice attempting a mad dash for the sunlight. So, what do you do with a plastic barrel full of hornets? Well, if you're a 50-year-old redneck with a thirst for vengeance, you pull out your trusty duct tape and MacJabber your F-150's exhaust port to the end of the vacuum cleaner, and then roll enough coal to smoke every last Sanuva into a stupor. Then, you take the entire wet-dry vac and dump it into a nearby bonfire as a final fuck you. So yeah, hornets may be bad, but sometimes the absolute jankiest way to get rid of them ends up being exactly the one you needed. Old power supplies. In high school, we had a PC building class. During this class there was an old court monitor the school was throwing away. One student thought it would be fun to stab a screwdriver through the plastic down into the monitor. The teacher just stared at him and told him to never do that again. He then explained to us about capacitors and the negative effects voltage can have on the human body. Crazy people wasp nests. People from Long Island. The first and the last one are the same thing though. Crazy people wasp nests. People from Long Island. The first and the last one are the same thing though. Moving water. A 1 meter cube of water weighs a ton, literally, and it doesn't care whether you're in its way. I'm not even talking about tsunami levels either. As little as 6 inches of fast flowing water can knock you off your feet, and 12 inches can move a car. Something like the Strid at Bolton Abbey will fuck you in ways you hadn't even considered. I'm not saying having fun in water is a bad thing or something you shouldn't do, but it's definitely something that deserves being mindful about. Mexican drug cartels. Fun story. I used to be a mobile dog groomer, and we had a customer who was a member of the Latin Kings. Rolled up expecting the worst, and found a serene home with spoiled dogs, a polite family who gave us cookies as a tip, and the most terrifying and large Hispanic man I've ever met. He looked like the physical embodiment of the name Chango, and was covered head to toe in disturbing tats. Super friendly guy, left us a great review, and we later got calls from other Kings members who wanted to use our services. Pretty surreal walking into a room while wearing bright scrubs full of guns, coke, angry dudes and whiffer beaters, and being paid generously for washing some lieutenant's wife's poodle. Got quite a few stories from that wild time. Edit. Holy shit, this blew up. Sorry for the late response. I'm sick and only writing this by the grace of Dayquil. I'm also willing to answer any questions anyone has, although I promise it isn't as exciting as it sounds. So a few stories. We gained a sort of reputation among the different gang members for not being freaked out over their guns, drugs, and general cartelisms. I grew up in a less than stable home, so that helped. Anyway, after a while, a few of the members that we groomed for kinda took a liking to us, especially the Chango guy and another I'll write about. As a result, when we'd show up, they would be friendly, and I'd shoot the shit with them for a little bit. It was pretty crazy sitting down with cold-blooded dudes who could kill me without hesitating, and watching part of whatever game was on, or playing Halo with one of the younger members, while waiting for their wife or daughter to bring the dog out. Eventually it got to where, if I saw one of the friendly ones in public, they'd come over and say hi, or give the nod. I thought that was awesome. My girlfriend at the time didn't. One day we left one of the houses. After grooming the dogs, they'd offered a couple beers and a joint, but I had, despite being a lettuce puffer myself, turned them down, because I definitely don't trust anything from RLK. I'm glad I did this, because about 5 minutes down the road, we pull to a stop when this biggest sheriff's truck screeches to a halt out in front of us, and these heavy cop cars appear from somewhere behind us. They come over with rifles and heavy gear and, politely but firmly, tell us to get out so they could have a talk with us. Turns out, someone had noticed the big grooming van in front of the not so inconspicuous LK member's house, and we had garnered the attention of a couple agencies who were pretty convinced we were moving something for the cartel. After some arguing, a consented search, and being basically told that we should stop doing business with the fucking cartel if we don't want to be hung off an overpass, we were allowed to go on our way. There's no bigger rush than going from talking about how Fluffy got a summer cut to having a very enthusiastic agent level his rifle in your direction. The cops were actually pretty professional, although very rough. Another time we were on our way to the job when we heard an army of sirens behind us. We pulled over and let them pass, wondered what the deal was, hoped we could rubberneck, and continued on our merry way. We round the corner to the house and see that same army of emergency vehicles, cops, and other M's swarming the lawn to help a very terrified woman freaking out, screaming in Spanish, and holding a kitchen knife at the officers and her LK husband. From what I could find out via other members later on, he was fucking another woman, and she had, upon learning this, gotten super high and flipped her shit. She sat and screamed a lot until the officers surrounded her in a semicircle, then turned around to lung at her husband, only for one cop, who deserves a raise, to tackle the shit out of her and pull the knife away. I kinda felt bad for the Charlo. He was seriously crying at his girl being taken away. I mean, he was a hardcore criminal, but they have feelings too. We stopped grooming his dogs after that. I guess he got rid of the dogs. I like to think he found them a home, but it's most likely that they're not on this world anymore. I don't like to think about that part though. I saved one story for last because most people call bullshit, but I have the proof to back it up. So there was this other lieutenant who took a liking to me, Eddie, fake name. Eddie was a stereotype. Big, fat, bald, goatee, tatted up, and mean as hell to pretty much everyone else. Total piece of shit, but I, knowing I was in a lion's den, knew to be respectful, relaxed, and most of all, helpful. How was I helpful, you may ask? Well, on top of being a groomer, I'm a gun dude. Always have been. I just think they are neat. Our friendship started when I was grooming his wife's pit. He hated this dog, or so he said. I love pits, and I know quite a bit about them. He was complaining about it when I picked it up because he was going to clip its ears as an adult, nonetheless, but nobody wants to clip a full-grown pit's ears because, well, name a reason. I was totally blunt and told him that clipping its ears was just gonna cost him a shit ton of money. That got his attention, so I explained how pits with clipped ears are prone to infection and that it'd be able to hear better with long ears. That part's bullshit, but I needed to convince him for the poor dog's sake. He thought for a minute, looked at me like a gorilla looks at a banana, and then firmly said, "Okay man. Thanks." He went back inside. I groomed the dog and thought nothing of it. The next time we arrived to Eddie's, his demeanor had changed a bit, in that he didn't outright ignore me or shove his wife toward me to avoid having to deal with me. He waved me over, asked if I wanted a beer, then scoffed when I said no, and told me to come inside and get the fucking dog. I entered, and my attention was immediately drawn to the number of guns in his living room. You name it, they had it. I was checking out this decked out R15 that was similar to one I own. When he asked what I was doing, I pointed out that his bolt was too greasy, that it was going to jam. He, pretty aggressively, strutted over and grabbed it out of my hands. I told him about my preferred cleaner, Hops number 9, and how it leaves my rifle spotless and oiled up perfectly. He listened, grunted, and walked away. Eventually we kept talking, and it got to the point that he would say something like "ai" when I would come, and we would shake hands and bullshit for a minute before I'd take his wife's bit, floppy-eared, to the van. So, end of the story. We were moving, which is one reason why I can freely write this, and our company's friendship with the Latin Kings was coming to an end. We groomed for around 12 of them for well over a year, and had come to see the humans behind the tats, felonies, and general shithedness. Don't get me wrong, fuck cartels, but some of the members grew on me. Our last groom for them was Eddie, and he wasn't thrilled when I told him that we were leaving, but he maintained his bad motherfucker vibe the whole time. A man of few words, he didn't really seem to give a shit that I was leaving, except for the fact that nobody was grooming his wife's dogs anymore. I hope she and the dog found their way out. Eddie got busted a while back, last I heard. Oh well. As I was about to leave, the dog groomed. He said something along the lines of "come here." I walked over, his eyes piercing my soul. I'm not too proud to admit that I was half convinced that I was about to get shot, along with all my coworkers. I immediately regretted moving, and wondered if I could make it outside before being gunned down like in an old western. These thoughts and more were passing through my head when he picked up a vintage Zastava M48 he owned that I had shown interest in many times, pushed it to my chest, and said, "Hey, I know you wanted this. Keep it," and nodded his head. A rush of emotions came through me, from fear to euphoria to frustration at letting my mind freak me out. He saw this in my face, chuckled, said "fucking guru," and walked back to his kitchen. I left with it and showed it to my very confused coworkers. I still have it to this day. I don't know if that was legal or moral, but nobody's ever told me I can't own it, and even if someone did I wouldn't just turn it in. The serial number didn't come up as stolen either. It's my favorite rifle, and I'm pretty proud of the origin, even if cartels suck. I'll post pics of it if someone wants. Easy, the eyes. Edit a few famous cases and the outcome. Lauryn Hill, $2.3 million, 3 months in prison. Al Capone, $270,000 for Miltoday, 7 years in prison. Wesley Snipes, $7 million, 3 years in prison. Pete Rose, $410,000, then, and $1 million in new charges now, 5 months in prison. Richard Hatch, $2 million, 2 years in prison, and then 2 more years after he got out and didn't pay again. Leona Helmsley, $7.1 million, sentence was 16 years, but ended up doing 22 months in prison and 2 months house arrest. She was in her 60s. Walter C. Anderson, $247,482,114 owed to the eyes. Additional interest on the $247,482,114. 6 years in prison and still fighting. Joe Francis, $250,000, 5 months in jail. Spiro Anu, $10,000, 3 years probation. Resigned as vice president and was disbarred and called morally corrupt by the State Bar Association. Ty Warner, Beanie Baby creator, $5.5 million, currently on probation, fighting prosecutors' insistence on prison time. James Trafficant, convicted of evasion, 8 years in prison. Jack Abramoff, $24.7 million, 70 months in prison. Edie Fleece, evasion, 37 months in prison. The Salon Joe Giddis, $414,000, 15 and 41 month prison sentence. Joe has also been ordered to be deported. Jarrell, $1.1 million, 28 months in prison. Paul Georgiadis and clients, $7 billion plus, 15 years in prison. Michael Cohen, $1.8 million, 3 years in prison. Mike Sorrentino, $500,000, 8 months in prison. Yeah, they made me pay $2,500 through Walmart gift cards. Didn't know they had the offices in India. Walmart gift cards? You got ripped off. Last I heard they only took iTunes gift cards. Pretty sure it's Google Play now. Administrative assistants. They can improve or deteriorate your work life in the most ninja-like way. You do not want one cross with you. I work at a factory. Our secretary has the most access to the place of anyone in the plant, including the plant manager who makes probably 20x her pay, if not way more. She has the keys for every cabinet, drawer, door, posting board, company vehicle, you name it. A few of us have some important keys, but she has all of them. Undertow. I fucked with Undertow once, without meaning to. I was lucky I didn't go through the bars of the wave machine at the pool that made it. Story, at pool. Wave machine time. Pool full of kids. I decide to close eyes, hold breath and bob under the surface like, say, a helium balloon on a ceiling. Pleasant floating sensation. Undertow from the waves coming out of the machine pulled me towards the machine, while everyone else was staying in place, or being pushed back. The first I knew of it was my head hitting the bars of the machine that, quite rightly, they'd installed to stop people swimming into the machine. The gap between those bars was, I think, actually wide enough for a person to squeeze through sideways, which is pretty scary to think about. There were so many people in the pool I don't think anyone noticed me heading that way. Crazy aggressive drivers, just back off. That is not a fight to win, because people get hurt. Just let the arsehole go and fall back. If you have some idiot in a car next to you or in front of you, I see people try to put them in their place by being aggressive back, and I have witnessed accidents because of this. My instructor told me this rule: the idiot's right of way. If they drive like a moron, let them pass and have their crash elsewhere. Discussions on religion and politics with people I don't know very well. Can confirm, even with people you do know very well. Cocaine and feral cats. And definitely not at the same time. Cats jacked up on crack are the best guard animals. Skunks. Nobody wants to run one over. Nobody stops to admire the skunks. Skunks are fear. Another man's wife. Also, it's a good policy not to fuck with people from the Balkans. They tend to come in droves when fucked with. The sand people are easily startled, but they'll soon be back, and in greater numbers. People who don't use a phone case. They are clearly a psychopath. I've always said, the dude walking around with a busted ass iPhone X screen is likely a loose fucking cannon. Glitter. Funny story. I worked for a company where every tech had their own service van. One of the guys was being a dick about something, so the other guys put a tube of glitter in his account vents and turned the fan on high. When he started his van he got a face full of glitter. Now it's the middle of summer, so the guy was a little bit sweaty when he started up the van, so that shit stuck to his face real good. He spent like 20 minutes washing his face, but he still couldn't get it all. He eventually had to give up and start his day. Last call of the day is with this little old lady in her 80s. He gets to her house, performs the service she requested, and goes to get paid. As she's handing him a check she stops and says, "Young man, do you realize that you have glitter on your face?" He said that he turned beet red. The guy went to like 5 jobs that day and not once did anyone mention any glitter. Not that it would have done any good. Once that shit is on you, it takes a pressure washer to get it off. Someone else's food or medicine. You could literally kill someone. It's not just a prank, bro. Edit. Sad that this even needs to be said. Also thank you for the silver. Please like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want more videos like this. Comment and this dog and puppy will have a good life. Thanks for watching. Check out my other videos and don't forget to smile.